Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my January wrap up. I apologize for kind of like the weird background situation we have going on today. I'm really trying to squeeze this video in like the last hour that I can use natural light. I think I want to do a couple of reading stats before we go into this. So like I said, I read 10 books, 3 were romance books. 1 was young adult mystery, 2 were fantasy, 2 were literary fiction, 1 was sci-fi, 1 thriller, and 1 non-fiction. Out of the 10 books that I read this month, 5 were physical copies, and if you guys have watched my last couple of book videos, you will know that reading or just cutting down my physical TBR is my biggest reading goal of this year, and 5 books off my physical TBR is awesome. If I would have read 5 books, like that, then 5 books I feel like would have been great. But the fact that I read double that and I only read 5 that I own, it's just like, Ivy, you have so many other books like you can read, like, which I mean, you gotta love the libraries, but still. So let's start with the first book that I read this month, which is Heartstopper Volume 5. These books are just a hug. These books are a spring day laying in the grass in the breeze. That's what these books are. They're just so happy. I also started watching the show, and the show somehow encapsulates, I don't know if that's the correct word, just the vibe of the books perfectly. I don't know how it does it. But this is the latest book. I think this came out in December. It was like 3 days into the new year. I had a doctor's appointment that I was like kind of nervous for, so I was like, if you can make it to this doctor's appointment, like you can go to Barnes & Noble and you can buy the Heartstopper book and you can sit in their little cafe and binge the entire thing, and it's just a wonderful experience. On a similar note to that, on like a YA romance, I read The Summer of Broken Rules, which I actually really enjoyed. I know that a lot of people, like I think Haley Pham was the one that like really put this book on the map, but for some reason I just didn't think I was gonna like it. I loved it. Perfect summer vibes. This book follows Meredith, and she is returning to Martha's Vineyard for the first time since her sister passed away. And it's like a big family tradition. Every summer is spent on Martha's Vineyard. So while her family loves that, like it just brings up a lot of memories for her sister. So we're kind of dealing with that. And then we have this really happy celebration of a wedding with one of the cousins. So like the entire family is on this island, and it's this tradition for them to play assassin every summer. So there's like this big assassin game, and it is so much fun because we have all the original family members who like play assassin every single year, and then we have the groom's entire family who like want to like make their mark. It is just so fun, and I thought that the assassin game was going to be kind of like cheesy or like goofy or just too YA for me. It was so much fun. I also just felt so connected to the couple in this book. I don't know if it's because they have such a great friendship or if because they're friends first. This book is the course of like a week, I believe. And for some reason, I like had no issue that at the end of the week, like we were at the point of the romance that we were at. Like I feel like it made sense. Like I could feel that connection even though it was so quick. Another little tidbit about this book is her dad and her dad's brother, Fred and George Weasley, if they would have gotten to have like adult children at the same time, or if they would have gotten to kind of like grow old together, Fred and George Weasley. I just love this book, and thinking about this book, I don't know, it makes me so happy. I feel like I could definitely see myself taking this on a beach vacation if I wanted to do a little reread. I would really recommend this book if you've been like kind of teeter-tottering back and forth on whether or not you want to read it, or if you were like me and bought it when everyone was reading it and then were like, not really interested anymore. It's definitely worth the read. Another YA book I read this month was The Final Gambit, which finishes off the Inheritance Game series for me. I don't believe I'm going to continue with the Brothers Hawthorne and whatever the next one is called. I can't obviously go into the depths of this book because it's the last one in the series. It's not that I didn't like this book, I just kind of found that I really thought this series would have done better in a 2-book series. I just felt like it was kind of dragged out, and I also think that I might have just gone into this series with too many expectations. I know a lot of people who this is like a 5-star series for. It is not a 5-star series for me in the slightest. I feel like if this is like a 3-star series for me, it's heavy YA, like young YA. So if you're younger, like if I would have read this in middle school, this would have been my life. I also read Adelaide this month. Where do I even start with this book? I loved this book. We follow Adelaide, and I think she's maybe like 25. She's getting her master's degree in London, and we are following her just kind of like growing up in this time period of her life. And Adelaide is kind of promiscuous. She's kind of written off relationships because of bad experiences that she's had in the past, and she just wants to have fun now. Until one day she goes on a date with this guy who she thought would just be a little fling, and she's head over heels. And we kind of follow her life during the relationship of from when she meets this guy to kind of like the climax of their love story. I do want to preface, this is not a romance book. This is a book following Adelaide during a relationship. I loved the main character Adelaide. I loved, not that I loved the relationship, but I loved the way the author went about describing it. Like, I feel like I knew Rory, the love interest, well enough to see why she was so in love with him. I will say, if you're someone who gets triggered by things in books, definitely look up trigger warnings because a lot of hard topics are touched on in this book. But if you are the person who you feel like you go 110% effort for everybody and you put everybody's needs before yourself and then you're left empty, you will feel so connected to Adelaide. I would really, really recommend this. I also read The Berry Pickers this month. I think this is by Amanda Peters, but I could be incorrect. I'll edit that out if I'm incorrect. So we follow 2 characters, Joe and Norma. It takes place, I believe, in the 70s, and Joe is Native American, and his family every summer goes to Maine to be berry pickers for the berry farms in Maine. And way back when Joe was 6, he had a little sister named Ruthie who was 4, and I think they were like playing in the woods someday, and he lost sight of her or left her. I can't quite remember the exact details, and Ruthie went missing. So that's kind of like the baseline of our story. This little 4-year-old girl goes missing. So then we follow Joe, her older brother. I think he's like in his 50s at this point, in the 70s, and we follow Norma, who I'm assuming you guys can guess who Norma is. It's not like explicitly said that Norma and Ruthie are the same person in like any of the descriptions for this book, but it's like common knowledge like in the first chapter. So I don't know why it's like, if it's considered a spoiler. I wouldn't consider it a spoiler. I feel like that's kind of obvious. But we're following Joe and Norma and their lives, and this book, I listened to the audiobook of this book, which I would really recommend. I loved the narrator for Norma. This book, just the family aspects of this book were just made me feel something so deep in my heart. I really feel like this is a story about family, and it's just so good. I feel like every character is so complex, and there's so much interpretation you can do on every single character. I would really, really recommend it. So that is The Berry Pickers. I feel like I did not do justice talking about that book, but I sobbed through like the last, I think it was like the last 8%. I sobbed through the last 8%. So if you want a book that's gonna make you feel it, in here, The Berry Pickers. Then I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This book follows Dana. She is a Black 26-year-old girl, and our story starts with her and her boyfriend moving into a new apartment in LA, and they're unpacking their books, and all of a sudden Dana gets really dizzy and just disappears, and she wakes up on this hill facing this lake. There's a little white boy drowning in the lake. So of course, like, despite the fact that she just kind of got like teleported or transfigured, she doesn't really know what happened, but obviously her first instinct is to go save this little boy. So she goes and she pulls the little boy out of the water. She starts doing compression. She starts doing mouth to mouth to try to revive this little boy. Little does she know that we are not only completely across the United States, but we have been transported into the antebellum South. And we just kind of follow her as she kind of gets pulled back and forth between LA in the 70s and the antebellum South. I think it's like 1805, and she keeps getting pulled back to this one boy, this little boy that she pulled out of the water. And we kind of figure out, like, why is she connected to this boy? Why is this boy connected to her? How are we getting, like, pulled back and forth? And this book was so good. The writing style of this, I feel like I'm not equipped enough in like writing styles to know why I like a writing style, but the writing style in this just had me so consumed. Every time I picked up the book to read it, I was like, I could not stop reading it. Like, I just needed to know what was going to happen. And every time I wasn't reading this book, I was like, where's Dana right now? Like, I need to go and read about this girl. This book is just so good. I would really, really recommend it. So that is Kindred. Okay guys, it's obviously later in the day. I have filmed 10 different clips. My dog is being bad, my cats are being bad, my blood pressure is high. So hopefully this is the winner. So the next book that I want to talk about is my one nonfiction book this month, which was 5 Days at Memorial. This is about Memorial Hospital in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and specifically the fact that there were physicians accused of euthanizing patients, which sounds super interesting. This is my book club book of the month. We were all so excited to read this. We thought it would be super interesting. None of us really knew a lot about Katrina. Obviously, like, just the ethical debate around it. We thought it would be like a fun book to read, which you might be like, why would you pick a nonfiction book for your book club? But we like all agreed that we thought we would like it. And I don't know if any of us liked it. This book was like 500 pages long, and it was 300 pages too long. It was so dragged out. There was so much information that I feel like we didn't need. It was told really confusing, but I think if you happen to be interested in that subject and this book sounds like something you might enjoy, I would really recommend maybe finding a documentary that covers like a similar thing, or a podcast, because this book was a time investment that I will never get back. The last book that I read this month was First Lie Wins. This is a thriller book that has been kind of going around for the past month or 2 months. This follows our main character, Evie Porter, and our book starts off and she is with her boyfriend Ryan, and their relationship's getting more serious and she's meeting his friends, and we find out that Evie Porter is not Evie Porter. So that's all I really want to say about the plot. I really think thrillers are best to go in, like, if not completely blind, mainly blind to what's going on in the plot. I listened to the audiobook of this and I would 100% recommend. I kind of went back and forth just because I haven't had time towards the end of the month to really do anything but audiobooks. But the audiobook of this was so good. I feel like if I would have been reading this, I might have thought it was a little slower than what I typically like, but I really, really liked it in audiobook form. I'm not like a thriller reader, so I feel like I'm kind of conflicted on how I want to review this. I personally really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the ending. The twist or the reveal at the end definitely didn't have me like it didn't knock my socks off, but it was like a good resolution to the rest of the story. There's also just a lot of things to keep you interested. It's not like super fast paced. I don't even know if I would call it a thriller because it's not really thrilling. I would say more of it's like a mystery. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't like super like thrilling, but yeah, it was really good. I don't read a ton of thrillers. I really enjoyed it. So if you want a quick thriller read, that is First Lie Wins. The last two books that I wanted to talk about in today's video are my favorites from the month, which we actually had a lot of good ones this month. I loved Kindred, I loved The Berry Pickers, I loved The Summer of Broken Rules, I loved Adelaide. So many good picks from this month, but my favorite two books of the month were none other than Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Where do I even start? Where do I even start? So Divine Rivals is a YA fantasy about a girl named Iris. And Iris, so Divine Rivals is a fantasy book taking place, I assumed, in what was like kind of like London. And this world that we're in has a bunch of gods that they call the Divine. And there used to be hundreds of them, and they kind of started to kill each other, and now we're left with 5 divines. I think like 100 years ago from where our book is placed, the divines were all put to sleep. So they're not dead, but they're asleep. And our story starts when one of the divines raises from his sleep, or wakes up, I guess, and declares war on another divine. So it starts out and we're in the middle of this war between these two gods. Iris is our main character, and her brother is fighting for one of the gods in the war, and she is writing him letters. She has no idea how to get a hold of him, or where to send the letters, or who to ask where to send the letters. So she's just kind of like putting them in her closet because they shared her closet. So it's kind of like a place that was for them, and it has his belongings in it. So she's stuffing them under her wardrobe, and she realizes that they're gone. So she thinks like maybe there's enough magic in the world for my letters to be going to my brother. They're not going to her brother. The boy that they are going to, they kind of start conversing back and forth through these letters that are just magically kind of going back and forth between them. Everyone, like when I went into this book, a lot of people said that it was slow, that it's like not very fantasy, like there's not a whole lot of fantasy in it. So I don't know, I went into this thinking that I wasn't gonna love it as much as everyone else did, because I read the first 80 pages of this book twice. And I think the third time was when I finally finished it. And I'd say maybe like 100 pages, 150-ish pages into this book, we take a turn, and after that, I was done for. I sat on this couch right here. I could not stop reading this book. I sobbed through this book, you guys. Sobbed. The romance in this book, I need to put it down because my arms are getting tired. The romance in this book, you guys, it's unmatched. Like, talking about it right now, it is unmatched. It is so good. The ending left me like with so many questions, just needing the next book. I don't really rate books. I just have a really hard time differentiating my ratings. But if I would have to rate these would both be 5 stars so easily. The next one we pick up right where we left off. I will say I thought the ending for this one was a little rushed. I just felt like there were a couple parts at the end that were added kind of for like dramatic effect, and I was like, how are we going to wrap this up? Like, so much is still going on, and then it just like went really quickly. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I kind of either wish the book would have been a little bit longer, or maybe have been like 2 shorter books. I just felt like it was a little rushed at the end, but I sobbed through that book as well. Like oh my god. I can't even get my thoughts together. There are a couple of couples in this book. They're so good. All of the couples in this book are so good. The story, I don't know what it is about these books, but I truly think that they are going to be some of my favorite books, like, for life. The feeling that they gave me, I feel like I haven't felt that since Harry Potter. Just being in a world that you feel like you could live there. And I feel like a lot of the times when I read books, the side characters are often, they just feel like I'm like I know that someone wrote them. All of the side characters felt like real people to me. Everyone felt so real. I was attached to all of the characters. I feel like often when a romance is the main chunk of a book, it's really easy to only really care about those two characters, and the side characters are just kind of like whatever. But all of the side characters in these books I cared so much about. When I was finished with Ruthless Vows, all I wanted to do was reread them. They're so good. Like, just thinking about them, I'm just so happy that I found books that I love. It's the best feeling in the world. It makes you remember why you love reading so much. And last year I really just did not have a great reading year, and my favorite books of last year were all rereads, and these were what I needed to start off the year. They are so good. Obviously, I mean, they're really, really popular. I haven't heard a single person say that they didn't like them. I cannot wait to read A River Enchanted. If A River Enchanted is written any way like these are written, I'm going to love it, just because these are truly like some of the best books I've ever read. And I'm so sad that like I'm kind of late to the bandwagon, because I feel in my heart like no one loves these books as much as I do, and I know that that isn't true because everyone loves these books. But if you have been putting off reading these books, or if you're just not sure about them, please give them a chance. This one's on Kindle Unlimited. You have no excuses. They are so good. I stack all of the books that I read every month on top of each other at the top of my bookshelf, and I cannot wait. Like, I'm so glad that this is the end of the month, because I can take them down and display them. I love these books so much. The couple in here means so much to me. The side characters in here mean so much to me. Thinking about the ending of these books, thinking about what they go through in these books, just make me feel so deeply. And when I feel that attached to a character and two characters and to a world, that's when I know like a book is for me. Like, I feel like I'm talking about this like it's religion. Also, if you have not read them, please read them. If you've read this one and you like haven't picked this one up yet, pick it up. It's so good. But yeah, those are the 10 books that I read this month. Please let me know, what were the really good books that you read this month? What were the bad books that you read this month? I have such a hefty TBR, so I love knowing like what needs to be at the top and what can kind of just be like thrown behind the bookshelf to hold the other books up for me to get to on a rainy day. But yeah, so those are the books that I read this month. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it to the end of this video. People who watch my videos the entire way through, like, I cannot tell you how much that means to me. So thank you so much. I will see you guys in my next video. And I just realized that that basket is right above my head, and it looks so freaky on my hair, and I really hope that none of you picked up on that until I mentioned it and you weren't staring at it the whole time.